In this chapter, we're going to be looking at what class list logs are, and we're going to be we're going to be concentrating a little more on how to use class list logs to look at separation and school adjustment. Now, this is not something that you're going to be needing to submit an assignment for because it's a very simple type of observation that most of us already use in our classrooms. It's just a different perspective that the book is giving us as far as when to use them or how to use them when we're looking at separation and school adjustment. So, using the class list log, it's a very easy method. It's a method or format to record one or more short, important to know pieces of information about each child present on that day. Using class list logs helps teachers and instructional assistants and instructional staff become more intentional in their planning. For those of you guys who are already in the field and are familiar with ASQs and DRDPs and who work for county or state preschool programs, you guys are aware of how many people come into your classrooms and they want to see the type of communication and the data that you gather on a daily basis. Using a class list log is basically a list that includes the date, all of the children's names in your classroom in alphabetical order, and you're simply using them as a checkoff list that you can use to, if you want to see how many of your children came to school today, kind of like an attendance check, you can use a class list log. If you want to see how many children um, in your classroom know their numbers 1 through 10 as they're coming in and you're doing your health daily health checks, you can ask them, hey, count for me, Anthony. And Anthony counts from 1 to 10. You can very quickly jot down the date. Let's say yesterday, 6/19/20, Anthony, quick note, can count from 1 to 10. So it's a very simple, not time consuming at all to use the class list log. So the book gives us a little example of what it can look like. Again, you want to give your class list log maybe the title of what you're looking for. So if you're looking to see how many kids can count or what numbers they can count to, or you can see if they identify certain colors, or if you want to look, as the book is saying, to look at separation anxiety. I think it's really difficult, in my opinion, to look at, trying to do daily health checks and trying to get the kids into the classroom and then sit there and determine who had a good day and who didn't have a good day when they were coming in. But if you wanted to do it, obviously, as the book explains, it can be done, and it's very easy. So in their example here, they have all of the children's name in alphabetical order. They have Amy, Bajik, Carter, Howard, and Patty. So the observing, or the person is observing arrivals and first day, and then obviously you want to put in the recorder, which would be your name or any instructional staff that's in your classroom or that's going to be helping you. So the first child is Amy. The observation says kissed mom goodbye, ate, and napped. Sorry, it took me a while to see that. Bajik watched father from window. He was quiet, ate part of lunch, cried at night, nap time. Carter, brought by grandma, pushed her out the door, ate, no nap. And then Howard, absent, no show, moved, phone later. So it's just very quick notes that the teacher's jotting down that will help her remember, or extend on later, as we mentioned in the first chapter. And then Patty, quiet, goodbye to mom, played alone, ate, napped, can't remember. See all those questions marked? Again, they're very quick notes that is just basically reminders, something that you can do on a daily basis for different things. Again, the book talks to us about how to use it or to look at separation on the first day of school, but you can basically use it to look at anything or to observe any skill. Again, using the class list log, the uses, you can use it to observe separation from family, large or small muscle development. Like I mentioned, maybe you want to see how many of your kids can cut on a straight line or a curved line, or how many kids can write their own name, which would be small muscles. And then large, how many kids can bounce a ball, how many kids can hop on one foot. So it doesn't matter what you're looking for. It's just a very quick list. And obviously, if you are doing a DRDP, great pieces of evidence evidence that you can very quickly develop or gather in a few minutes for all of your children. Language and literacy, how many kids can identify their name in print? How many children or how many letters does each child know? How many colors? If you read Clifford the Big Red Dog Goes to Preschool, and then you ask the child to summarize the book or tell you something they remembered about the book, that's looking at literacy and language development. Math, science, art blocks, or dramatic play. Basically, again, anything. How do you find the time? Again, teachers were always running around like crazy. It seems like the day is just not long enough, right? But if we use the right tools, and if possible in your classroom and in your programs, technology, everything is a lot easier. So most Head Start programs and state preschool programs are very avid users of technology as far as tablets and iPads. So you can develop, in your Google Documents, in your Microsoft PowerPoint, or in your notes, develop a template for your class list logs, and you can use that. Or you can simply go old school and handwrite it, right? Put it on a clipboard, index card, mailing labels. A lot of people love using mailing labels. I don't, because I think they get pricey after a while. If you have a date stamp, then, convenience, you don't have to write the date for every single child. But if you're only writing one date, it wouldn't be a big deal. But, date stamp, and again, tablet or smartphone. So this is an example of a class list log that can be used in a class. Oh, and again, going back to finding the time, they're so simple that you can pre-make them in advance, right? At the beginning of your school year, you know who your kids are going to be, what kids you're going to have in your classroom. You can print out a whole bunch of them and then just have a space to input the title, and then just switch them out throughout the week or throughout the days or throughout the weeks. And they're very easy to do. So you can basically do them at any time, during nap time, or during lunchtime, mealtime, a drop off, a pickup, during small group time, one-on-one time, playtime. They're very easy to do, and it's very convenient, and you can, again, basically do it at any time. So this is an example of one that I would do in my classroom. And the title for my class list log for this one is, this is how I write my name. So 6/18/20 was the date, and her name is Destiny. And then on the right, I would have her write her name. And then you can see the pattern, right? So Destiny, Ricardo, Sandy, and William. So they all completed this on the 18th, and I have given a chance for them to write their own name. So I can use this as pieces of evidence. I can file them away in their portfolio. I can use them for DRDPs, and of course, develop activities that will strengthen those skills. So let's say Destiny, when I asked her to write her name, she only wrote the letter D. Well, that's a great way to begin, right? She knows that her name begins with the capital D, but she's still missing the rest of her letters. So I want to make sure that I develop a goal or a lesson or activities that will help her learn to form her whole name, or even just identify, the letters in her name, or even go from D to ES. We can break it down in halfways. Ricardo wrote his name completely, capital RICARDO, correctly. So I'm like, wow, he knows how to write his name. Does he know all his letters though? Because sometimes, kids either know the letters or the sounds, or they can write it, but they're missing one or the other skill. So Ricardo knows how to correctly write his whole name, but he does not know the correct or the letter names. So now, once I know that, I'm going to concentrate and I'm going to make sure that Ricardo learns the letters and the letter names in his name. Sandy wrote her name correctly. She knows the letters. She knows the sounds. So guess what? Now I'm going to move on to teaching her how to write her last name. William is having a hard time holding a pencil. So I am going to concentrate on helping William develop strength in his fine motor so that he's better able, or, it has a better opportunity to write his name. So that's how you take a class list log. And that's how you take the data that you gather through any type of observation and use it to help the children strengthen skills that they already have. What do you do with the information? Well, you file it in the child's folder. If you have a folder, if you have a CUME, make sure anything that belongs to a child that you are using as evidence or documentation or part of an assessment, it needs to be private. It's critical. It is paramount that the information gathered on a child is kept private. You can put it if you're using a class list log, you probably don't want to observe something that's too private, right? So let's say if you had suspicions of child abuse or something like that, you wouldn't conduct observations of all of the children in the same page or on the same format. So let's say in this case you wanted to see how many kids or how fast kids can complete an obstacle course. So although it is private, it is not something that most people would consider like, whoa, that's, you shouldn't be providing that information or allowing other people to see that. So if you do a class list lock, you can make copies. All you have to do is write on one page and then make copies and then include it in the folders of all of the children that were part of that observation. You can also use the information to transfer onto a checklist. Again, we're going to be learning about the DRDPs. We're going to be looking at rating scales. We're going to be looking at frequency scales. So all of the information that you gathered here can be pieces of evidence to complete those assessments, or like the ASQ. You can also use these class list logs or the information gathered through this form of observations to communicate with the family, parent-teacher conferences, or if you're just having some concerns, you can call parents or you can class dojo, whichever way you communicate with your families. Remember to always be objective and not subjective. So objective, concentrating on the facts, on things that can be recreated again, and subjective, you want to stay away from words that can lead people to misunderstand. You don't want to use adverbs as much. You just want to be very clear, concise, and descriptive, which is objective. Again, all of your observations need to be objective. Please remember to look at the to view the objective versus subjective presentation. Another tool or another method of observation that is presented in chapter 2 is the reflective journal. So the reflective journal is a place for recording personal thoughts and ideas. It's like a diary. You do not document on children's assessment or children, you don't include children's information in these. This is your teacher diary. This is a way for teachers to reflect on their day, what worked, what went well, what needs fine-tuning. Reflective journals are for teachers' eyes only. Keep them private and safe. Now, again, teachers are busy. Are you going to have time to write in your journal every day? More than likely, you will not. If you do, kudos to you. And I want to meet you because I want to know what you do, because I have been teaching for a long time and I still don't get a chance to journal every single day. But if you do have a chance, and you just want to make sure that you don't remember, that you don't forget something, you want to write it down in your reflective journal. And it's just going to, again, help you hold you accountable. It's a way for you to master a craft. It's a way for you to work on weaknesses that we may have. It's a way for you to strengthen skills that you already possess. Maybe you have a difficult time working with the instructional staff in your classroom, and maybe you can find ideas or think of ideas that you can use the next day or next week. All that stuff can be written down in your reflective journal. A reflective journal can help you, again, have quick checks, what's working, what's not working. You can see changes. If you journal throughout the year or throughout the month, you can see what you wrote the first week versus the second week versus a month from when you first wrote. It gives you a chance to examine particular skills or specific situations or instances throughout your day. It helps you make changes, just like everything else. Whenever you are aware of something and you want to make a change, then it's self-reflection, right? And then again, when you reflect something, it becomes a memory and it's a lot difficult for you to forget. So, using a reflective journal is a really good idea, but do not beat yourself up if you just do not have the time to do it. If you are a home visitator, if you are a part of a home visitation program, if you are a Head Start provider, you know that you're going to be visiting or conducting home visits. Using journals or reflective journals or just taking notes of your whole experience is a really good idea. How do you find time? Look at this lady. She's an octopus, right? That's how it feels to be a teacher. You have hands and legs and more than two and two. It's just very difficult. We are very lucky now with the technology that has given us so much more. um, you can be walking around your classroom and you can be talking into your tablet, into your phone, and it types everything up for you. You don't have to take your eyes away from your children, from the students. It's just technology has brought so many positive changes into our teaching world. And what do you do with the reflective journal? Again, keep it secure, keep it private. Uh, think about it as a reflective journal as an emotional release. The day went well, the day didn't go well. Write that down, jot it down. Maybe your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your sister, your brother, whoever it may be that you're used to talking to is not there for you every single day to listen to all your issues. Use a reflective journal. A reflective journal can also be used to measure professional development, jot down what you've done, what conferences you went to, what you learned at conferences. It's just like a way of taking notes. And you don't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be a paper based journal. For those of you guys who love technology, who are tech savvy, you can develop your own journals on even Google. Google has templates for journals, so that's a great way to also, employ the reflective journal. And of course, you can use a reflective journal to explore questions. And like I mentioned earlier, you can use the reflective journal to review at intervals. So if you have a goal and you set your goal at the beginning of the year, maybe you can keep checking back on that goal every month or every 2 months, and then you can reflect on what has changed, what hasn't changed, what's working, what's not working. And again, it helps you become accountable for your own learning, for your own teaching, and it helps you be better prepared and intentional on a daily basis. Again, the book offers the idea that we can use a class list log to look at separation and school adjustment. Um, in my opinion, it's a little bit difficult, especially at the first day of school, because we don't know the kids. And remember, if we go back to EAR 20 or the beginning intro class to child development, wherever it is that you took it, attachment is a very complex issue. It's not, yes, you have good attachment, or no, you have bad attachment. There's a lot of stuff that goes into attachment and what type of attachment a child has. Stranger anxiety and separation anxiety and goodbye rituals, all of this has to do with culture. Now, when I talk about culture, I don't mean Mexican culture, American culture, Asian culture, Black culture. When I talk about culture, I talk about the culture that each family has. So you can have three families who are American Caucasian families who have mom and dad and two children each home, but each one will have different cultures depending on what jobs the parents have, what sleeping schedule they have, what foods they prefer to eat, what's allowed and what's not allowed in each home. So the fact that, that you may be a specific ethnicity or race obviously does impact your culture, but the culture that you have in your home is a lot more important when it comes to all of these things. So the class that we will have in this classroom online will not be the same culture that you will find, say, in another class. So say this is not the only class you're taking this semester. The connections and the activities that we will be working on in this classroom will not be the same as activities and lessons and collaborations and partnerships that you are going to have in another class. So the cultures are going to be completely different. So that's what I talk about, or that's what I refer to when I say culture. Looking at separation and school adjustment, so preparation for entering programs or school, it is very important and advisable that you can gather as much information as possible prior to the first day of school. So most teachers have back to school nights or open houses or orientation for parents or students before the first day of school, especially now that we're living through this whole COVID pandemic. I cannot even fathom, or it's just so hard for me to figure out how everything's going to work. You know, we still don't know if we're going to go back to school face to face. We still don't know if we're going to have the same amount of kids that we're used to having. So it's just going to be very difficult. So if it's already difficult for children leaving their home, imagine how much more it's going to be to leave their home now after this whole pandemic. So it's very nice to have or to gather as much information as possible, but it can be very difficult. But again, if you have time for personal meetings or visiting the home, or parents visiting the program or school, or formal family orientation and transitions for infants or toddlers or preschoolers to kinder, it's just very, very nice, and it just helps everyone involved. But again, depending on your program and where you work and what they require and what they allow, that will determine how much you can do in order to prepare before, or in order to gather um, as much information as possible before the first day of school. Helping all children with school adjustment, again, separation anxiety and difficulties. This is an issue that is increasing by the day in our country. Mental health is a big issue, it's a big problem. Not a lot of people talk about it, not a lot of people are informed about it, not a lot of people believe in it. I am a firm believer that we do not, or that we are not educated as much as we should be. In my family personally, I have loved ones that suffer from mental illnesses, and I firsthand understand and know how it feels to live with something like that. So as a teacher, it is a huge responsibility that we have to make sure that we help our kids, ease through those things by helping with eating, sleeping, toileting, participation, social interactions, acting out, helping out with behavior issues, maybe even developing rituals when coming to school or leaving school. But the best thing we can do as teachers is be supportive of the students and of the parents, and develop relationships with not only the children but also the parents, so that we can be better able to help one another. As a teacher, that's the best thing that I think that we can do. Also, don't forget that we are teachers, we're not specialists. We do not diagnose, we do not analyze, we only observe. And if we believe that there is something severe, then we can gather information, document, and share that information with the proper person, maybe a school counselor, a school psychologist, or SLP, or even the parents, or a pediatrician, and then go from there. But as teachers, all we can do is offer assistance and resources, and maybe even try to develop or put together some referrals for our students. But we do not assess. Sorry, we do not analyze, and we do not diagnose. Including all children with school adjustment, again, all children, especially now with this whole pandemic and everything that's going on, a lot more kids are going to have a difficult time adjusting. Many parents are staying home. um, Kids are gonna, they're getting used to learning via technology or online, so it's going to be kind of difficult to get back to being distracted by peers or listening to another adult outside of the home. And then when you have children who have an IEP, which is an individualized education plan, who are diagnosed with special needs, whether it's learning disabilities or speech or language delays or other things like that. And then some children may have an IFSP, which is the Individualized Family Service Plan. So there's maybe sometimes where children come into your class with an IFSP and they don't necessarily themselves have a disability, but maybe their families or parents do. So for example, last year I had a child who had an IFSP, but it was because his parents were both blind. So that's just an IFSP just gives us information about the family and the goals that they have and how we need to help them succeed in the classroom. Least restrictive environment. All children, regardless of abilities and disabilities, have the right to free and appropriate public education. So in the least restrictive environment, so if you have a child who has a wheelchair, your environment needs to be able to accommodate to his needs. So if you need ramps or whatever it may be, if you have a child who has a speech delay or impediment, is there somewhere where the child or can go to receive services for speech in your school? So that's what the least restrictive environment refers to. Again, culturally competent. When you have children who come from different cultures or cultures that you are not familiar with, again, something else that that's going on right now in our world, all the racism and the Black and Brown Lives Matter. And if you're here in Southern California and Riverside, a lot of our schools, many of our schools have a high population of Hispanic and Black students, and not just Hispanic and Black students, but all kinds of races and ethnicities. And as a teacher, you need to be culturally competent. And the way you become culturally competent is by looking at yourself, self reflect. Who are you and what do you believe? And how do your beliefs and you impact how children see other kids or how children see one another? For those kids who are dual language learners, DLL, kids who speak more than one language or who may not, or whose first language might not be English, as a teacher, how do you deal with that? How do you help them? So, obviously, all of those things can impact and will impact social and emotional development, adjustment to school, and everything else. So again, a huge responsibility that we have as teachers and parents as well. But teachers making sure that we give, in preschool, I think that besides academic, the most important thing we can do for children is provide them and help them and guide them develop social emotional skills so that they're better able to learn and gain academic skills. If a child is not secure, if a child does not feel secure, if a child does not feel safe, if a child does not feel loved, if a child does not have self confidence, it is very, very difficult for that child to learn anything else. So remember that as a teacher, one of your main priorities should be to show those kids love and to help them develop social and emotional skills. So again, this is chapter 2. You will not have to conduct an observation of a class list log. It's just some information for you to have. I hope you guys learned something, and we'll be in touch. Take care.